Welcome back, Caniacs. It is the Caniac Chronicles. I'm your chronicler, Andy. This is season 1, episode 32, and tomorrow is the Eastern Conference Finals, folks. Get excited, get ready, get your towels ready. It's about to go down. Carolina is going to be facing Montreal tomorrow night. Today's Wednesday night. The Vegas game has just ended. Vegas put up a nice showing against Colorado. It was good to see Colorado finally lose at home. I've been waiting for it, and the time has finally come. But let's get into the agenda today. The focus is going to be on a preview of Carolina and Montreal. I'm going to try and keep it short because it is kind of late here, and I do kind of want to get on with the day or with the night here. The first thing I wanted to talk about, I pulled up the stats, I did the comparisons, and first let's talk about the offense. So the offense is pretty even, I would say. Keep in mind, Carolina has played the bare minimum number of games, 8 games. They're 8-0 in the playoffs, while Montreal has played almost double the amount of games. They're 8-6 in the playoffs, so they've played 14 games, and Carolina's only played 8. So with that being said, the scoring comes mostly, almost entirely from the Hall, Stankoven, Blake line, the HSB line. We have Stankoven leading the pack with 7 goals, 4 for Jackson Blake, and then 3 for Taylor Hall. Hall is tied with Aho at 3 goals, although Aho has 2 empty net goals, let's not forget. And then Nikolai Ehlers is leading the bottom of the pack, rather, with 2. There's a few guys with 1, and then it just kind of falls off, and there's just a number of assists. Although I will highlight Keandre Miller having 6 assists this postseason and a +9 rating. I don't really give too much weight to the plus-minus statistic, but in his case, I do think that is pretty indicative of how well his game is at this point, especially given how many minutes he plays per game. He's capping out at almost 24 minutes on the ice per game, so that's huge for Miller to be able to put up numbers like that. We look over to Montreal, and it's a pretty similar picture. It's Alex Newhook leading the pack with 7 goals for them, 2 really big game winners for Montreal. And then Nick Suzuki, Kirby Dach, Cole Caulfield, and Juraj Slavkovsky coming up the pack with 4 goals each. Everybody else after that has 3 or less. And it's a pretty even distribution. Again, when you consider the number of games played, the comparison there, the goal distribution looks very similar to one another. So that is a very long-winded way of saying I imagine if the goal scoring stays consistent for the 2 teams, if the distribution stays similar for the 2 teams, that favors Carolina. Now, if any one line, or if the middle or the bottom depth guys start scoring for Montreal, or if the top line for Carolina starts getting going, that could really play into a factor there of who ends up winning this series, especially for Carolina's sake. You really want to get that top line going. You've been winning series, you've been sweeping the series with just basically one line. So imagine how much easier it's going to get if the top line can also start contributing and you can start putting up 4, 5, 6, 7 goals a game. Not to mention, if you're down late in games, you might be able to pull one out of your hat and force an overtime, or even kind of steal one in regulation. That would be huge for Carolina, again, if the first line can get going. Comparing the goaltenders, it's a pretty similar scenario. Obviously, Freddie Anderson is 8-0 with 2 shutouts this postseason. He's faced 201 shots. He's faced 201 shots. He has stopped 191 of those, and he has let in 10 goals for a .950 save percentage, a 1.12 goals against average. Just unbelievable Herculean numbers there from Freddie Anderson. If he can keep that going, it's a lock pretty much no matter what, no matter who ends up scoring for Carolina. If Freddie Anderson can maintain those numbers, those are beyond the numbers you need bare minimum to win a cup, in my opinion, let alone get to the cup. But with that being said, I do want to see Rod Brendamore keep a short leash on Anderson this postseason. If things start going awry in game one, I don't mind seeing Bussy start game two. If we're in the middle of the series, I don't mind seeing, Anderson pulled live in the game if things start getting out of control before the halfway mark. If he has a really bad second period overall, I also wouldn't mind seeing Bussy start the third. But the bottom line is I do want to see that short leash from Rod Brendamore, especially if Bussy is going to be the guy taking over the crease in the event that Anderson can't hold it together. I think Bussy deserves and needs that time, as much time as possible, to acclimate, to get into the mix, to get into his rhythm. The Canes have been off for a long period of time, and that's really favored them, in my opinion. Actually, I think Mark Messier said it better. There's a lot of skeptics out there if, rest versus rust. I think if Carolina is a team that can get it done, and I do think that this season they are, like Mark Messier said, they will benefit from this rest. There's a lot of guys who have just started a family. There's a lot of guys who have young families. They've been able to spend a lot of time with them this break. There's a few guys getting married this off season, including Bussy, and I'm sure that actually the three goalies are getting married. How could I forget? The three goalies are getting married this off season, and so maybe they've been able to spend some time with their soon to be wives, and been able to look at vendors or, work through wedding planning together to benefit them. Either way, I think this is more than just rest for this Carolina team. I think it's also going to be rejuvenation. And I think that will definitely play into Carolina's hand. They should definitely keep Montreal on their heels in game one and throughout the series. And the longer the series goes, I think the rest just continues to benefit Carolina. Okay, but back to the goaltending, short leash on Anderson from Rod Brendamore. I do want to see that. We have yet to see that from him, particularly with Anderson. I think this is the year you do it. You really need to keep your goaltending dialed in, and you need to keep the team locked into it too. Pulling the goalie and switching the goalie mid-game or in the middle of a period or at the end of a period, also sends a message to the boys. We saw Colorado did it in game 4, and they turned game 4 around, or game 5, They wrapped the series up by pulling their goalie for the third period, and their team turned things around for them. That was huge. And I would just like to see the same, from Rod with the boys and keeping that short leash on Anderson. I think this year, above all others, you have to do it this season. It's a must. Right? If you continue doing the same old, nothing's gonna change. And I hope it doesn't get to that point. I hope Anderson, stands tall and continues to own the crease and not give Rod a reason to pull him. And the boys in front of him, I hope he also gets the support from them too, because sometimes you have to pull your goalie for the guys in front to wake them up. So yeah, it's just, those are my thoughts on Anderson. I'm pleasantly surprised with his performance this far. And then moving over to Montreal, we have, I'll just mention it quick. Jacob Fowler had to come in relief the other night to game 6 to cover for Dobesh. He played 8 and a half minutes. He saw 2 shots and let 1 in, so he's got a .500 save percentage. I can't really blame the kid. It was his first bit of playoff hockey. But Jakub Dobesh, the rookie, has been the phenom, really, for Montreal. He's played 14 games. He's 8-6. He's seen 399 shots. He has stopped 363 for a .910 save percentage and a 2.52 goals against average. So huge series so far, or huge postseason so far for the rookie Dobesh. I truly think his numbers are a little bit, underrepresentative of him so far this postseason. He did get shelled in a few games, especially a few against Buffalo, from what I can remember, and I think those have deflated his numbers a little bit. But I don't think they're too far off. I'll say that. But he's been huge. he's been a big part of why they have been able to move on from both series. You know, they famously won Game 7 against Tampa this season with 9 shots on goal, and that's because Dobesh was standing tall on the other end and keeping everything out. He was doing what Vasilevsky has been known to do and hasn't been able to replicate in a couple of years now. And when a goalie is playing like that, it really gives the team a chance to bend but not break. And as long as that keeps being prolonged, the team that is bending but not breaking oftentimes ends up closing the game out, whether it's an overtime winner, whether it's a series clincher, whatever it might be. And that was the case against Buffalo and Tampa Bay. And again, because it was Dobesh, he was, Anderson was making big saves at big times, big, momentum swinging saves, really game swinging saves. A lot of his big saves were in overtime, so they could be game enders immediately if he lets any of them in. But Dobish has been more along the lines of just consistent goaltending, minute by minute, shift by shift. You can rely on him. And he has come up with really big saves as well, but it's just been more consistent for him, especially because he sees so many more shots than Anderson has. And again, they have played almost double the games, and he's seen just about double the shots again. So those numbers stack up, and Anderson does have the better numbers overall, but Anderson's got to keep that up. And, I'm sure Dobish is going to try and reach another level this series. So big goaltending from both of these guys. It might end up being a goaltending battle, but it also could end up being a situation where it's a shootout, or maybe it's one team scoring, starts heating up, and the other one just kind of gets put away. We'll see. But yeah, I'm going to stick to my original prediction of Carolina in 6. I think that's more than reasonable. I wouldn't be surprised if the series is split after 4. But I believe after that, Carolina would really turn up the juice and sort of end it in 6. I think that rest is really going to benefit them. Montreal is pretty banged up. As I mentioned in last week's episode, no matter who came out of that Buffalo-Montreal series, it was going to take a lot out of the team to get beyond that. And I hope that plays into Carolina's favor. I really hope that Carolina doesn't come out with too much rust under them, and I don't think they will. Rod is a good coach. Rod is, keeping them locked and engaged, and they're all ready. They all buy into this Carolina team, to this play style that Rod has them playing, and they're hungry to play it. And again, let's not forget, I forgot if I mentioned this recently or not, but it is something I have wanted to mention. Carolina, one of the reasons they've been such a good postseason team, I feel, up until that Eastern Conference Finals, is because they have historically played postseason hockey through the regular season. And then that makes the transition into the postseason a lot easier. But after those first 2 rounds, if you've been playing postseason hockey all year long, plus those first 2 rounds, it can really bite you in the backside in the Eastern Conference Finals. And that's something that is very different about this year. This team as a whole has had a lot of rest related to injury reasons. Slavin did not play a vast majority of this season. Miller spent some time, off the ice. I want to say Ehlers was out for some time. Jarvis missed some games. It was a lot of rest for injury related stuff, and the team got through just by playing hockey, just by playing good hockey, not playoff hockey, just good hockey. And they also got a bit of a help, a bit of a boost from Bussy, him having a great regular season performance, and that got them to the playoffs. And now that gives them all that extra energy, all that extra juice, and that jump, and that physical edge in this postseason. And now is the point in the postseason where it needs to start paying dividends, and I think it will this season. I think all that rest, both recent rest, regular season rest, and not having to play postseason hockey all throughout the regular season is really going to benefit them. They did not have to pick up their game like that until about the last 2 to 4 weeks of the regular season, I felt. And I think that was the exact right move. I don't know if that was calculated by Rod and the front offices this year, but if it was, that was a major good decision in my opinion. And this series will be the first test, I believe, of it. If controlling that game during the regular season and only using it when you needed to, I think this will be the series where you start to see that pay off, where you start to see and reap those rewards from that, call. But either way, gonna be a great series. Let's hope that Carolina puts up 4 wins on the board, and let's hope they do it fast. How crazy would it be if they sweep this series too and started off 12-0? I mean, that would be the Cinderella story right there for them to have been swept and 4-1 in the last 3 Eastern Conference Finals that they've had, only to come roaring back and blow through the first 3 rounds undefeated. That would be magical if you ask me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We got to stay current to this series at hand. I say go Carolina. We've got them at 8 p.m. tomorrow night on I know all of them are on HBO, TNT, wherever you watch it. And they're playing at 8 o'clock tomorrow, Thursday. They're playing at 7 o'clock on Saturday. I'll get this episode posted for the morning, and I'll try and get some shorts out in the coming days. But anyways, thanks for listening, folks. I do appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and go Canes!